I hoped today might be a good day. Hope is a dangerous thing. That's it for now. Then next week, Command will send a different message. Attack at dawn. There is only way this war ends. Last man standing. A few years ago, I saw the Academy Award nominated film 1917 set during World War I. I opened this video with this quote because whilst a movie certainly not made in 1917, it is a wonderful example of war and cultural history blending together. The film 1917 is a cultural source. But what are they? Cultural sources, whether it is a propaganda film or a victory monument, are fantastic ways in understanding war. In this video, I will outline 3 reasons why culture matters to the experience and legacy of war. Topics covered include propaganda, communications, and mourning. I'm Madeline Rose Jones, and I study history, literature, and culture. Welcome to Snowy Fictions. We begin first with the most common cultural association with war: propaganda. These are typically emotionally charged messages aiming to provoke a desired outcome from citizens, soldiers, or leaders. Classic examples come from the 20th century, particularly the World Wars, the Vietnam War, as well as the wider Cold War. These instances of propaganda could take multiple formats: leaflets being dropped from planes, feature-length movies, colourful posters, and even product advertising. Think Coca-Cola for American soldiers in World War II. Cultural history, being in the domain of historical studies, has a critical importance on primary sources. These are immediate, first-hand accounts and objects from those who had direct experience in a conflict and thus differ from secondary and academic sources. Primary sources are crucial to understand the past. Historians, therefore, must consider who the audience was, when and why it was created, whether it was reproduced, and how others interpreted it. So often, contextualization is required. Those studying propaganda from any of these wars in the 20th century certainly have a variety to choose from. Best, many of these sources are digitalized. Propaganda, after all, is meant for sharing and mobilization. Yet, examples of propaganda can give insight to the experience of war. For one, it's through propaganda that we understand the way states and individuals saw themselves and others. Australian propaganda from World War I has a clear emphasis on the British Empire and loyalty to the mother country. At this stage of her history, Australia viewed herself as an extension of the British Empire and thus had loyalty to the monarch and the wider British people. This was expressed through both culture and the military, for the Anzacs in Gallipoli, Turkey, were part of the larger Triple Entree strategy against the Central Powers. As for the cultural side of Australia in World War I, there are many examples of concerts and events, as well as postcards and posters, expressing a connection between Australia and countries like France, Russia, and of course, Great Britain. Propaganda certainly has an impactful aesthetic. I recall the vibrant red found in Soviet and Communist posters, particularly from Vietnam and China. These, as well as the domineering aesthetics from the Third Reich, have even inspired fantasy and science fiction novelists. The wonderful graphic designer duo Mina Lima, behind Harry Potter and the Fantastic Beasts movie, have cited the visual culture from the 1930s and the 1950s as a source of inspiration. The historical discipline, of course, understands cultural history to often reveal the circumstances, experiences, and fallout from war. Propaganda may also include previous wars. Take the 1930s Soviet film about Alexander Nevsky, a medieval Russian figure and saint who fought on the Battle of the Ice in the 13th century AD. So often, the wars of the past shape the wars of today. Propaganda and culture can reveal the many ways this occurs. Which brings us on to the next topic, communications, which may vary between state actors and non-state actors. Many communications during war employ technology used for media and propagandistic purposes. A good example is television, a medium famous for manipulation and scandals. But video media is also used for journalism, research, and sharing current affairs. These, of course, can get manipulative and scandalous themselves. Regardless, technology is vital for communications and culture, which this video argues can help us better understand war. Communications may consist of letters and messages between various people. Much of these details are not made public until the war has ended. What I love about cultural sources, especially letters, is the intimacy between them. You are reminded of the soldiers in war and the harsh, brutal experiences. We owe it to the past to understand their lives and deaths in the present. A Christmas postcard from a son stuck in the World War I trenches to his mother can convey so much. Cultural history is mostly concerned with cultural artifacts like media, but that's not all. Cultural historians are fascinated by the mindsets and thought processes of those living in these times. This differs from propaganda because culture is shared by all. So often, cultural history extends well after a war has finished. World War II ended in 1945, yet there are still countless novels, films, songs, documentaries, and exhibitions still being released today. Cultural history is so often a dialogue between different thinkers and times. You may interpret war as a failure of these dialogues or a continuation of a debate. Cultural relics, histories, and media can also inspire troops and give them a place for rest and escapism. Soldiers and militaries have their own cultures. During World War II, the American military published Yank magazine, which featured famous cartoonists and actresses. A historian interested in culture and war, therefore, may consider the role these magazines played during World War II. Finally, we must consider the role culture has after a war ends. Wars are, of course, brutal experiences which can transform, decay, lands and peoples. This is particularly the case when technology advances. We only have to see the destruction from both wars across Eurasia. There's also catastrophic fallouts regarding demographics and the economy. A war may result in victory, sure, but the dead will remain dead. That's where culture comes in, for remembrance. A way for those in peacetime to understand the times of war. In Westminster Abbey, there's the famous Tomb of the Unknown Soldier from World War I. While it's an example of architectural history in Britain as well as culture, this monument communicates the many men who sacrificed their lives. There's also something humanizing about it too. We do not know who the man is, what his motives and stories are. Yet him, being a man and a soldier, ascribes a level of dignity regardless. War films and novels attempt a similar effect too. Consider the French graveyard scene in Saving Private Ryan. I'd also add, war movies, monuments, and memorials typically take on a nationalistic flavour. Quite possibly. The best recent example comes from Russia and the Cathedral for the Armed Forces. Imagery from World War II and Joseph Stalin's reign tells the story of the Great Patriotic War, which is well embodied in the Russian psyche. Earlier this year, I finally visited Gallipoli in northwestern Turkey, which memorialises the Australian and New Zealand forces who fought in World War I. Anzac Day is an important day for Australians and New Zealanders. It takes place on the 25th of April each year. However, it's not all about nationalism. Some war memorialism and commentary can contravene nationalist narratives. Otto, a famous artist from Weimar, Germany, was scorned by many for his frank and brutal depictions of trench life. Kurt Vonnegut's blockbuster Slaughterhouse-Five is sharp in depicting the bloodshed from the Dresden bombings in 1945. Cultural depictions of war are heavily contested and debated. Interestingly, Soviet propaganda produced two exceptional films about World War II, Ivan's Childhood and Come and See. Many Anglophone viewers have interpreted these as anti-war and pro-childhood innocence. I have a different take, but war cinema, literature, and art is certainly interesting for creating discussion and debate. We cannot escape the legacy, realities, and fallout from war, but maybe through culture we can better understand it. Culture is the method societies and individuals use to express the diverse experiences of war. The military writer Clausewitz often discussed the important role civilians, soldiers, and politicians played in war. This goes well above logistics and strategy, however. Everyone has had some interaction with the cultural history of war, whether it's through tourism, visiting a monument, watching a war movie, playing some video games, or listening to a politician cite a war from the past. Those are my words, but I know there is much more to say on war, culture, and the human capacity for propaganda, communication, and memorialization. What are your favourite war movies or novels? Comment below. I'd love to start a discussion about this. If you'd like, subscribe for frequent videos about history, literature, and culture. I also have a monthly mailing list linked below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.